Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Backlog Banter. Today, we're going to be talking about No Man's Sky. You guys remember that the big disaster, the 2016 disaster that was No Man's Sky. The game has changed a lot since launch. It has been 4 years since that game came out. I remember getting that game when it came out. It does not feel like that long ago, but it was. And we've both played a little bit of its since, and we're going to talk about our thoughts on how the game has changed, what the game's like now, and how much we enjoy it as an experience.
No Man's Sky is a really weird or enigmatic game for me, I suppose,
Mm-hmm.
because it's one of the first games I ever bought with my own money from working, because it came out the summer of 2016, so I was 15. I'm very, very proud of myself. Fucking got money in my debit account. It's like, oh my God, I got a debit card. So I bought No Man's Sky. I preloaded it. I've been hyped for it since it got announced, because I love sci-fi. I love exploration, adventure, all of it. It seemed right up my alley. Started it. I was very disappointed. Kind of put the game away. I came back with the first major update, which I think was No Man's Sky Next, if I remember. And I actually reviewed No Man's Sky Next for Gaming Trend. Still didn't like it. And since then, I've hopped in and out with various updates. PSVR update, the second major update, Beyond, I believe was the name of the second major update. So I've been in and out. No Man's Sky, more than almost any game, I think, ever, is a game I wish I liked more than I actually do.
Mm-hmm. So I have a different experience with this game. I got this for my birthday. Like this was my birthday gift. I got it on Steam uh, when it came out. Like the morning that it was released, I was like, "Dad, put in your credit card information. I want to get this game." And then I got it. I played probably an hour of it. I was having a good time. And then my friend came over and played the game just for like 6 hours straight. He just took my computer and just played the game 6 hours straight. So that ran out of the allotted time that is you can return games on Steam if you haven't played them for a certain amount. So I'm stuck with No Man's Sky at that point. So I played a little more and I was having a good time. And at launch, I think the game had a really compelling hook. I was interested in it at first. I was liking scanning the environment and learning new species and just flying the ship around and stuff like that. But then it hit a wall where there was basically nothing to do. And that was very frustrating. I haven't touched the game since until this morning when I played the game again. And now I think it might be the opposite. I think that it's kind of a hard game to get into because there are so many mechanics. There's so many scientific names and
Yes.
and species and different things scattered around the maps, and you're always on a weird world that's completely randomized. But I think if you get into it, it could be really fun. But I don't know if the hook is strong enough now for me to want to compel me to play the game for long term to get to base building and vehicles and the stock system and all that crazy, or the economy and all that crazy stuff that's more long-term based. I don't know if I'll ever get there.
The first thing I want to say about No Man's Sky, because all the things just listed really return me to one central concept. Sean Murray pulled off what I think is the most fucking incredible redemption arc of any game dev.
Oh yeah.
Because the anger of like 2016, like summer 2016 anger towards No Man's Sky was incredible. And to be fair, it's really unclear if Sean Murray is a pathological liar, or probably more likely he's an indie dev that got put, much like Fall Guys actually, in a spotlight
Actually,
by
yeah.
PlayStation that he was not ready for, and PlayStation said, just deal with it. And he didn't well. So the initial hate was warranted, but that game sold well. So Sean Murray could have said, okay, I'm done, but he didn't. And in the wake of that launch, I think is one of the most impressive content tales on any game, with one of the most dedicated and fun communities online I've ever seen for a game. And so I really like the vibe of No Man's Sky. And I think something, I'm sure you can agree with this too, but for me, it's actually the vibe of the gameplay and the game feel and the world that drives me to No Man's Sky, because the tech of it is so impressive. The way that the worlds render and the way that you really create, your own experience, because you're going through planets no one else will see. Well, now with multiplayer, I guess you can, for
Mm-hmm.
once.
Yeah, yeah.
But really, what you're forging is your own adventure with this retro sci-fi aesthetic, which I absolutely fucking love. The way the game looks, the way it sounds, the way it feels to explore a planet that feels like your own, and then be on the planet and fly into space and see the space station and see the galaxy. There's a sense of exploration here that not even Breath of the Wild can
Oh
match,
yeah. Hmm.
in my opinion.
I think it comes with pros and cons. I remember being blown away, obviously everyone was, by those trailers that were shown PlayStation conferences and things. And that's why the game was so popular when it came out, is the idea of randomized worlds and these, crazy creatures walking around, and the fact that you can kind of do whatever you want in a sandbox space environment. It was all really cool. And I think that the aesthetic is great. I like the retro sci-fi, as you were saying. I like the way the character looks. I like the fact that the randomized creatures are always it's like spore creatures almost. They're like, they
Yes.
don't look like they should work, but they're hopping around and you're like, all right, why not? I like that. I like the sort of NPCs that you can meet on space stations and those sort of things. But I do think that the randomized nature of the game is a little bit to its detriment, because it can feel sort of empty and mishmashy at times. When I land on a planet and it gives me a things like, okay, go find a copper deposit, but there's not a copper deposit within like a really large space of me. It feels like, okay, well, this mission clearly wasn't designed for this planet, so why did it let me go here and do that on this planet if I'm just going to be wandering around? Caves sometimes feel like they're clipped into mountains. I had a weird problem with the terrain not loading properly and feeling like my character wasn't like designed to be climbing these cliffs and going down these slopes and things like that. That's all because it's so randomized, and you are essentially the first person who's probably seen these planets before, and you're discovering everything, but it isn't designed. This isn't a tightly designed world, and I mean that's what they're going for, but I don't necessarily think it lends itself to the greatest gameplay mechanics, at least in its opening few hours, because you are so clumsy and you don't have much juice in your jetpack and you don't have much stamina. And I for my what are my first impressions essentially of this game, what I played this morning, I wasn't having the greatest time because I felt like it was a little too randomized for me.
I want to talk about the actual act of playing No Man's Sky in a minute, because my opinions on that are wildly different
Yeah,
than
I
the
think
game from a more top-down level. But for me, actually, yeah, it's janky as fuck. This game, like, this is not a AAA caliber game in terms of the way it presents information to you, to the way you interface with the world. Um, I am content, personally, clip jumping like up the side of a fucking mountain with my jetpack, kind of like how you could like futz your way up a mountain in Skyrim, even though you weren't supposed to be able to do it.
yeah.
Like for me, that feeling of agency, that okay, this world's fucked up, but it's also my fucked up world. There's something compelling to me about that, because there's something compelling to me about looking at a space vista and hearing that music and seeing these creatures and really feeling like, okay, this is uncharted. This territory is so uncharted that the team at Hello Games doesn't even know what's going to happen here.
Yeah.
And for me, I do find that compelling. And I think when you equip yourself with the right tools in the game, or you just play in creative mode, which I think is when it's more fun.
Oh, I didn't know that existed actually.
Yeah, creative mode basically strips away the resource collection elements of the game entirely.
Huh.
You can build what you want. You have the resources you need. You don't have to fucking worry about hot and cold and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's how I now prefer to play No Man's Sky,
I
because
might have
for
to try
me,
that, to be honest.
yeah, because the sense of exploration and adventure is where the game succeeds. Frankly, I think it's the only place it succeeds still. But I think it's such a fresh and novel approach to game design, and the fact that they're like, we don't even know what's happening.
Yeah.
That lends a sense of exploration that not even Breath of the Wild has, because honestly, this is your adventure in a way that no other game makes the adventure yours, no matter how much they claim to.
I actually, you do make a good point. This game is conceptually one of the greatest games ever made. Like
Absolutely.
when they pitch this game, it's like infinite randomized worlds. It's a universe. Literally, go wherever you want, do whatever the fuck you want. That is like God, what's the thing from Ready Player One? It's essentially like the Like
The
you ready to
Oasis.
the Oasis. Yeah, it's like the Oasis.
There we
Go
go.
wherever you want, do whatever you want. It's crazy. It's space. Aliens. I do think that what I was trying to get at earlier with the fact that the game is so janky, I like the randomized nature in concept. But when comparing it to what you said with Skyrim, where you can sort of clip jump your way up things and it feels a little janky going around, the reason that it's satisfying to do those things in games like Skyrim or Breath of the Wild or whatever is that there is designed places in the game where you're going to control properly, you're going to be able to discover things that were put there intentionally by the developers. But with No Man's Sky, the entire world is you clipping up these mountains. There isn't a sense of you're breaking the game past the world that you're supposed to know and finding new territories. I don't know what I'm trying to get at, but like, I
Here's
just
what
feel like
I'll,
the fact that it's all the jank, it just doesn't feel as special to me. It's special to butt your way up with a horse in Skyrim because there's a town
yeah.
right there and it's weird. But when you're doing that on every mountain in this game, or you're just trying to go down a hill and it's weird, that's where it gets a little bit off to me.
Here's what I'll say, and then I want to talk about some other aspects of the game. To me, this is, I think, the closest VR notwithstanding, because I don't even think the point's 1-to-1 there. But for us, I don't think we'll ever get closer to what it would have been like to play the original NES Zelda or some of those really fucked up, what is that, fourth gen games that evoke a sense of adventure that has never been present on that caliber, that level before, but with a technical prowess that is completely busted.
Yeah.
If you go back to play a lot of NES games, they're busted. They're just busted. But for people that grew up with them, the things they evoked are so incredible. And it's that evocative nature, those emotions, that gameplay experience that allows you to overlook the fact that, yeah, this is not put together well.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that's the kind of tension I have with No Man's Sky because, and I need to take my hat off for this. So I gotta get serious, I
Okay.
gotta get
All right.
serious with you for a
Hat
moment.
indicates not seriousness. You learned it here first, folks.
Here we go. The hat's off because here's what I'd like to say to you. My camera's mirrored. I'm doing my best. No Man's Sky is not fun to play. And the reason I don't think it's fun to play is for what you were talking about with go find the copper deposit. The copper deposit is not here.
Mm-hmm.
No Man's Sky is meticulous about its resources and the collection of its resources to an extent in a procedurally generated game that I've never seen before, and it's absolutely to its detriment.
Mm-hmm.
Because my problems with No Man's Sky used to be, that A, the fundamental gameplay loop is not fun, and B, there's not enough to do. Half of that problem's been solved. Base building is so much fun. Having built bases, there's so many options, and there's so many little ways you can craft it, and it feels really organic to do. I never really had as much fun building a structure in a game as I did since playing Minecraft when I built my first base in No Man's Sky. It really is that fun and that intuitive. And when I was playing again right before we recorded, I found an abandoned frigate, and I was exploring it, and there was fucking like gross aliens that had taken over, and there were like dead astronaut parts floating around, and it was all dark and spooky and shit. There's so much to do now.
Mm-hmm.
But to do it, you have to have fucking uranium to power stuff, and you can't find the uranium, so you go to find the uranium, but you can't even walk to the uranium because then your suit's taking damage because the temperature is wrong, so you got to find this other thing, but this other thing's not even on the planet, so then you take off, but then you're out of fuel in your boosters, so if you land again and there's no fuel in your boosters, you're stuck there until you walk over an entire fucking planet to find more fuel to put back into your boosters.
Mm-hmm.
I already don't like survival elements in a lot of games.
Yeah.
I think they need to be done really elegantly and really tastefully, and I don't think they're done elegantly or tastefully in No Man's Sky at all.
Well, I think, yeah, exactly. I think that's what I was trying to get at with the fact that this is my first impression. I didn't get to try building a base because I didn't feel compelled enough to get far enough in the game to end up building a base. I was stuck on an hour and a half, 2 hours in of get the terraforming thing and go find a copper deposit to do something. I don't know. It all just feels sort of like thrown together. Like they want it to be super scientific and semi-realistic, and you have to find sodium and oxygen and like copper deposits and all this. I was like, okay, That's cool. But when your inventory is filled with molecules and to upgrade things, you have to use molecules, but you just like click on it. Like it's not like they don't take the realism to the next level, so it doesn't feel coherent. It's like, why would you want to have everything be super scientific if everything else is going to be simplistic? Like it doesn't necessarily puzzle together in the way I think it should.
Yeah, I'm I don't know how much I agree with that because I think one of the fun things about No Man's Sky is even though I wake up having fucking night terrors with the phrase technology recharge fucking blaring in my mind. Um, there's something cool about collecting zinc and something cool about collecting elements and seeing these little fucking ions and building things. And if you're playing in survival, building your warp drive and things like that really does feel satisfying. But the satisfaction is marred by so much frustration in the fact that, like you were saying, there's this strange tension. You see it between the more realistic aspects and more simplistic gameplay considerations. I just see it between the way that this game clearly wants to be about exploration, but exploration comes at such a cost resource-wise that you can't really freely explore. Because one thing that I find with the procedural generation is sometimes you want to plants that are just ugly.
Mm-hmm.
They're just ugly, or they have such harsh environments or such anal sentinels that you can't really do much. So you want to go someplace else, but then you're punished because okay, the essential resources to get there are now gone, and the gameplay loop at every little step of the way is asking you to get this resource, to turn into this thing, to turn into this compound,
Yeah.
put into this item, to then use this item to put into that item, and then that item can power a ship, and then this ship can fly there, but now you gotta start again.
Yeah.
And for me, it really grinds down what I think could otherwise be a deeply satisfying gameplay experience, which is why, again, I think in the creative mode that was added, I don't know if that was there at launch. I mean, it's definitely there now.
Maybe.
I was playing last time.
Know.
But that just eschews a lot of the stuff that I think makes the game a lot less fun than it could be, and takes it away from what I think are its strengths.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, I think, and maybe I poorly phrased what I thought wasn't clicking together, but honestly, I completely do agree with you because when I was playing this game and I was getting into it and, doing a little bit of exploring around my crashed ship or whatever, and I was scanning the environment, I realized a couple minutes in, about 30 minutes into this gameplay loop, that the entire thing was just a series of fetch quests that were randomized so that it wasn't fun to go do. When you get a fetch quest, a good fetch quest in a game spurs you on to explore the world, find a path that naturally feels like it leads you to somewhere that makes sense, that you can do things along the way. But in this world, if it's like, okay, go do carbon, go find some carbon, you either just need to turn right and shoot a plant, which is not satisfying because it's right there, or it's super far away or really hard to find in a way that isn't natural because the game is so randomized, it can't keep up with its own systems. But I do think that it does have, I'm complaining too much because I do think this game does have potential. And I think if I got into it further and wanted to understand its mechanics and its systems in a more deep way, I would have a very good time. But I just can't compel myself to go any further than what I've played.
I think the only other thing I want to harp on, because I do actually have a lot more positives to say about this game. You talked about turning and fucking carbon blasting a plant with your mining beam. Even on a mechanical level, it feels so simple and not tactile in a way that I think is enjoyable.
Yeah.
Even the combat, when you get to combat against aliens or drones or whatever, or ship to ship combat, this game clearly excels most with its exploration, and everything else is a secondary consideration to some extent or another. Simplified mechanics to where they don't feel particularly empowering on a gut level of, okay, I just fired my weapon.
Yeah.
How does it feel? What's the feedback there? To the way that the game's resource quests just don't feel fun, right? And this is one of my biggest issues with any game. It's one of my issues I had with Carrion, to talk about a recent video. Card up here somewhere. Let's get more views on that
I
bad
need
boy.
to start going back and doing cards, dude.
Yeah.
I forget about that when I upload a video. Oops.
But see, my point being there is when a developer has such a strong central concept, something that I think is so magical, whenever they make choices that complicate that philosophy and take us further away from the elements that the game succeeds upon, it's just frustrating as a player, because No Man's Sky really should be one of my favorite games of all time. And in some respects, it really is, because what I value is player agency and nonlinear storytelling and open-ended design and adventure. Those things, that's what really matters to me. That's why Breath of the Wild is one of my favorite games of the modern era.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that like you can learn alien languages in this
Yeah,
game.
that's cool.
You can find monoliths that teach you words. And I love you can find the little aliens just hopping out and about, and you can scan them. And scanning, I think, is such a simple mechanic, but something that adds so much to the experience. Much in the way it does in Metroid Prime. Getting to scan things and knowing their scientific names, getting to rename them if you want to. There's just a level of depth and characterization here that's so special. And like I said, I love the aesthetic. I love the feeling of flight in the game. I
Yeah.
love how seamless it is. There's so much here that's so good, but it's just buried under a lot that I think just doesn't work. And it's stuff that is so fundamental to the way the game's designed that I don't think more content updates could fix it for me.
Yeah, and I think that's my problem is I was expecting with hearing all these things about how great the updates were and like, okay, great, you can finally play with friends. That's a
Yes,
fucking big one. The
which
the
is very cool
idea
to do.
the idea of when it came out is that, well, you're out there somewhere, but you're probably not going to see anyone. But then it turned out that you weren't. There wasn't other people in this world, and you could not go to the same coordinate to meet up. But now that obviously they fixed that, that's great. I might want to try multiplayer at some point. I think I wanted to try base building. I wanted to try vehicles. All these things that they added that clearly improved the game features wise. But then I'm kind of just hopping on my own record over and over again. But I really wish that I could get to the point where I was into those. I kind of expected those mechanics to be implemented earlier on in the game. And that would make the gameplay experience more compelling. If you sort of started off and you felt like you had to make your own base to survive the world, then that would teach you how to do base building mechanics. If in order to get something that's far away, the earlier on gave you the ability to make a vehicle, then that would introduce that. If they had integrated those mechanics more into the earlier gameplay, I definitely would be more engaged, because I feel like the first hour and a half of this game is fetch quest, fetch quest, fetch quest, fix your fucking ship, and then go off to space, and then you find another planet. But there really isn't a natural progression, in my opinion, because you kind of have to stumble upon things in order for them to happen. Or I don't know. I guess maybe I didn't get far enough, but I don't know. I don't feel like playing anymore, so that's not great.
Yeah,
I'm shitting on the game too much. I don't want to. I don't hate it. I could enjoy the game if I played more. I just did not really have a great time with my first few hours.
yeah. I just think it's a complicated game. It's a confusing game, not only on the player side, but I think on the design side. And I think that I would love for Hello Games to make a No Man's Sky 2. And I'd love it to be on next gen, I love it to be a PS5 exclusive, honestly, even though I'm planning to go Xbox next gen. Getting to use that SSD to hop between planets and see them capitalize on what they did well here with tech that can really support it, but at the same time look critically at what they built with No Man's Sky and see what works and see what doesn't, and build an experience that is more satisfying from the player's perspective. I think that could be honestly mind-blowing, because the closest for me the game got to really feeling revelatory, I suppose, is when I played in PSVR for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's natively compatible with PSVR now. You can adjust all kinds of settings, like you can have snap movement, you can have smooth movement, whatever. If you're familiar with VR, you'll be able to find something in there that's compelling for you. And stepping into that game in VR for the first time was almost a little bit of an emotional experience, because this was the sort of thing I've always wanted, like literally always.
I mean,
I was a
that's
little
what the
kid.
Oasis is. right?
Yeah.
Like we're getting there, which is interesting.
I mean, it's incredible doing this stuff in first person. Of course, I got sick about 15 minutes in and I had to stop playing, but
Mm-hmm.
that's a me problem. That's not a them problem. And I think I'm going to go back in and restrict my movement options a little bit more so there's less room for motion sickness because I just don't have my VR sea legs yet as much as I
Mm-hmm.
wish I did.
Yeah.
But playing that game in VR is really something else, and it's a testament to the world that Hello Games created, or the framework for your world that Hello Games lets you create.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but just getting to that world and feeling compelled by it, I think, is where the game is still hung up, even 4 years later. And for the people that connect with the game, right, they have what I think is one of the most interesting games in the medium period to enjoy. But for me, I'm always going to be on the outside, like poking in, being like, okay, but I want to like this. I want this to be my game. I
Mm-hmm.
want to return to this over and over again, but I just can't because of what we discussed.
Yeah.
So those are kind of my thoughts on No Man's Sky.
Yeah, I kind of ran my course on what I had to say. I don't have enough thoughts on the things that I wish I did, and I think that's because I didn't play enough. Honestly, I found it hard. I found it hard to compel myself to even start the game because we'd been playing this video for like 2 weeks, and I
Yeah.
could have started this game and gotten a world started and gotten past the stuff into something else, but I couldn't fuel myself to do it until the morning of. And I just think that's a testament to the poor experience I had my first time around, and how much I didn't enjoy the game and found frustration with it. And even though I had always been interested in checking out the new updates and seeing how the game had progressed, I never went back into it. And I think that's also a problem I have with games in general, is I'm not a fan of going back to games. I don't do it much in my normal life. I mean, there's exceptions with Smash and Minecraft and stuff like that are sort of play it for however long you want. But in a game where progression matters, where you're really creating something of your own, I find it hard to go back to things, and this is kind of the worst example of that because there's so many systems to remember and so much that they added to learn about that I can't see myself ever really getting into it.
And I mean, I think that's totally fair, and I think that's really actually important because it speaks not only to the way that I don't think that the post-launch content has addressed the most fundamental issues with the
Mm-hmm.
game, but I think it speaks on a larger scale to the fact you can't really do that. People always talk about the way that, oh, you can launch a game, and even if there's something wrong, it can be fixed later. But there are some things that are so fundamental to your game design that once they're there, and there's not much you're doing about it.
Yeah.
And I really think that my problems with No Man's Sky, short of fundamentally overhauling the gameplay loop, the addition of what I think is incredible content in base building and frigates and factions and all these things, it's never going to fix my central issue with the game. Which is why I really do hope, like I said, that we get a sequel where a more seasoned Hello Games takes a more critical lens to what their game is and what it could be, because I don't think it's the next Minecraft or Ark or anything like that, and I don't think it should be. I think it should be a trailblazer for tech and for exploration.
Mm-hmm.
And if they double down on that, I think they could make something truly, truly incredible. And like I said, I think it's incredible what Sean Murray and Hello Games have turned this into since launch, but it's just a different kind of incredible than what I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm looking for is more on the gameplay level. The story of No Man's Sky, I think, is important. I think there's a lot of takeaways from it on Sony's side, on Hello Games' side. Just as a player, as someone who watches games evolve in this modern era, there's so much that's interesting about it. But there's just a lot of things that will never be fixed in No Man's Sky that make what should be like a top 5 game of all time for me, not even in the top 100.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good wrap up right there. So I think that about does it for our discussion on No Man's Sky. If you have been a No Man's Sky fan in the last 4 years, actually getting into it and having experience with it, leave a comment down below and let us know what's been going on in the game, how someone from the inside of the community really views it, because obviously neither of us are. And that'd be interesting to see. But yeah, you got a breath. What you got to say?
Well, I was just gonna say, if you're looking for a good sci-fi game and this just isn't scratching that itch, you want something a little bit more kinetic, a little bit more ship to ship, check out Star Fox 64.
All right. On that note, look down in the description to check out our Twitters. We've got my Twitter, we've got his Twitter, we've got our Twitter, and you can follow all of them. And in fact, you should. And also subscribe and like the video because I see every single one of those notifications. And every time one happens, I'm like, yes.
It makes him happy. He texts me about it.
Occasionally, yes.
And really follow us on Twitter because we're popping off. Sometimes Tucker dances in the mirror listening to Animal Crossing music. Sometimes I post about Metroid Other M and close my phone and I get fucking 85 likes on a picture of a 10-year-old game that half the Nintendo community disliked. So we're popping off. That's the bottom line. Come pop off with us. Someone on the last video, might have been Carrie, and said that these guys need to blow up, and I agree. Thank you for saying that, sir.
We'll keep a screenshot of that, and when we hit, our next big milestone, we'll be like, this is the guy.
I hope he didn't mean in an
physically
explosive
sense.
that
would be bad. But if we blew up in terms of content expansion, I think that would be good. Yeah.
That's true. That's a good point. But I think that's all I have to say about No Man's Sky. I think I've been done talking about No Man's Sky for about 5 minutes now.
Yeah, I agree. I think we should stop the video. See you guys later.
See you later.
Hello, everyone. Whoa! I was about to go, and then you just had to jump right in.
Now I go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome
back.
Intro. Oh, wow, that was. Oh, I'm so glad you did that. Oh, that made my day so much better.